Excellent. We are live. Hello, 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 and welcome to the Public Healthpreneur podcast. I am your host, Quisha Umemba, the Publicpreneur. And if you are listening or watching, you are watching the podcast that helps you navigate the intersection of purpose and profit to make impact and income. Now, today's episode is going to be a little bit different. As a matter of fact, this series is a little bit different because we're talking about mental health and entrepreneurship. So, if you did not know, today is World Mental Health Day. And it is a day where we spread awareness and shed light on mental health and mental health challenges that are affected by or experienced by millions of Americans. Or people all over the nation, not just Americans. I want to pull up my notes here because I want to make sure I get this right and also make sure these questions that I'm asking my other guests, I don't miss when I'm asking myself as well. Okay, so World Mental Health Day takes place every year on October the 10th. It is not Mental Health Awareness Month. As a matter of fact, I think that is in May. It's early in the year. It's either April or May. But today, again, we're going to raise awareness on mental health issues and support those that are experiencing mental health issues and crisis. And so I wanted to use this opportunity, not just today to share my story, but also for the rest of the month to shed light on the challenges that we experience as entrepreneurs and as individuals that are self-employed. And so I think a lot of what we're going to share is going to actually resonate with anyone that's listening, considering the prevalence of mental health issues today. But however, it is going to pertain primarily to those of us that are helping professionals and that are in business for ourselves. And so over the next few weeks throughout the month of October, you're going to hear not only from myself, but from other women. Unfortunately, I couldn't recruit a man to join us, but you're going to hear from women who are either starting a business or running their business, and they have either experienced mental health challenges in the past or they're experiencing them now. And the stories are going to be incredible. I mean, you're going to hear from women that have had to close businesses, that have closed service lines, including myself, that have refunded money, that have had to pivot and make some changes, all because they were struggling at one point or another with these mental health challenges and trying to raise their business or trying to manage their business. And you'll also note some themes throughout all of these conversations. So there's going to be this underlying theme of faith. And so if you have a problem with us talking about God or talking about our faith, then this might not be the podcast series for you. You're also going to have there's an underlying theme that a lot of what we're talking about has nothing to do with business at all. And I think that's important to note because when we talk about mental health as it relates to entrepreneurship, you would think we would talk about, just the startup phase or, access to capital or losing out on contracts or, that whole client acquisition journey and struggling with that or scaling and trying to hire people and all of the stressful stuff that goes with building a business. But for myself and for the women that I'm interviewing throughout this series, that's not the major issue. The major issue is life and dealing with the stressors of life while also managing and running your business. That is what's common among all of us. We understand the challenges of business. We understand that it's going to be good days and it's going to be hard days and it's going to be bad days, but we're up for those challenges because we value self-employment that much and we value the work that we're doing and who we serve that much. But as you will see, trying to do what we love in the face of everyday life is really, really hard. And that is where the struggle comes. So those are a couple of things that you'll see. And then the takeaways, really, my goal or what I hope that you take away from this podcast series is that you see yourself. I always say that even, when I wrote my book on public health entrepreneurship, It's that you see yourself, that you can relate to some of the things that we're sharing with you, that you relate to our struggles, to our challenges, and hopefully ultimately to our triumphs as well. I hope that you learn something from how we've been able to um, um, you know um, get by, day to day, how we've been able to improve, how we've been able to incorporate some self-care practices into our routines that have worked for us. And hopefully you can see some of those and incorporate that as well. And then ultimately, I want you to know and take away from this series that you're not alone. Okay. I don't care who you are. I don't care what background you come from. I don't care your religious affiliation. I don't care where you went to school or if you didn't go to school or how much money you make or don't make. At the end of the day, every single person in the world, at one time or another, at some point in their life, have struggled with mental health. And if someone tells you they have not, it is a lie. To be, just quite frank and honest, it is a lie. Everybody at some point in their lives, at one time or another, struggles with mental health. All right, so that's kind of my introduction. I also want to give this disclaimer. It's not easy to have these conversations, which is why I was stumbling over myself at the beginning of this interview. It's not easy to be vulnerable. It's not easy to admit that you are quote unquote weak, as some people may see it. But I will say that there is something that is liberating about sharing your story and sharing your journey. And one thing that I know is that anytime I'm transparent with these challenges that I faced in my business, or even the mental health challenges that I face personally, people are inspired by it. People are encouraged by it. And a lot of times people will reach out to connect with me and ask me more questions about those types of things. So that's what I hope happens still in this case as well. All right. So every episode that we have, every interview that I have with a guest, I'm asking them a series of questions. I'm going to ask myself some of those same questions. And again, it's a lot easier when you're asking the questions and not necessarily being the one to answer the questions. But I want to be as candid and transparent about my experiences and my journey as well. I want to give a shout out to my digital media coach, Michelle Green Rhodes. He said, Quisha, you should share your story for Mental Health Day that's coming up in a couple of weeks. And my story, my one episode segment ended up turning into this 6-episode series. So I'm really excited that she pushed me kind of out of the comfort zone. You will find that there's no upsell at the end of this. This is a platform and this is just a service that I like to provide, this information and this awareness, just as another way to serve those that serve others. So let's get into the conversation. And for those of you that are joining in live, the chat is open. If there's a question, don't hesitate to put a question in there. I am an open book and I will answer any question that you have and any information that you need to know about me or my journey. All right, let's get into it. I'm going to get a sip of water and we'll get started. All right, so I want to share a little bit about my business and my entrepreneurial journey. So for those of you that may be new to my channel and not familiar with who I am, my name is Quisha Umemba. I am the CEO of Umemba Health, which is a public health training and consulting agency. In December, just in a couple of months, we will celebrate 5 years in business. I'm super excited about that. And I have been a full-time entrepreneur, 100% self-employed for almost 3 years. So at the end of this year will be 3 years. No, sorry, 2.5 years. I'm rushing my time, 2.5 years. So our business provides public health services, primarily workforce development services for federal and government agencies, but we also serve nonprofit, academia, corporate America, whoever would like to train their staff to just do better, not only internally, but especially externally, engaging in their with their community members in culturally competent ways. And so we do a lot of workshop facilitation, curriculum development, e-course development, speaking, resource and toolkit development, you name it, we do it. I absolutely love every single day that I get to sit in this office and serve the clients that we serve and help them to improve their organizations and improve their access and their engagement with their communities. Umemba Health is actually my third attempt at business. I started as a diabetes educator and registered nurse. When I first got into public health a couple of years after, I started a diabetes education business. That business, I was only in business for 1 year. And then shortly after that, I started a partnership with two other women. We were all diabetes educators. We were doing diabetes and chronic disease education in general. And that was a short-lived partnership. I actually pulled out probably after a year because I moved and had some life changes. But I always say third time is the charm. That's what it took for me. I learned a lot of lessons in those two failed business endeavors. And so I do not despise the experience that I got out of those jobs at all. Okay, so you may have also heard about me because I recently wrote a book that launched in March of this year called Public Health Entrepreneurship, Navigating the Intersection of Purpose and Profit. And so I am a public health business coach. And if you'd like more information about those services, you can visit my website, QuishaUmemba.com. So that's enough about my business and a little bit about my entrepreneurial journey. What you're really here to find out more about is my mental health challenges while running a business. And so I want to kind of go back before I even started talk about some things that transpired this year and ultimately where I kind of developed this platform to really talk about the importance of mental health and maintaining a good mental health while being an entrepreneur. And I want to go back because I realize, as those people do when you're going through therapy, that I've probably struggled with anxiety for a very, very long time. And so I've considered myself to be a multi-passionate overachiever. I always have been. Even though I do think my parents, and no blast to them, but my parents were pretty hard on me as the oldest child and oldest daughter. My parents were very much, you make A's, you make B's, you don't bring C's home. What is a C, right? And so I started very early knowing that I had to perform at a high level. I don't think that's any different from a lot of parents, actually. But one thing that I realized is because of my personality and because of some things that happened in my childhood, I also expected myself to perform at a very high level. And when you have that type of standard for yourself, and you also have that type of expectation from your parents and from those around you, you tend to become something called a perfectionist. And maybe you've experienced this as well, or maybe you have not, but perfectionism is a need for everything to be perfect. You got to get straight A's. You have to be at the top of the class. You know, everything has to be done to a standard of perfection. And now I said that, all coming up for years. And now everything just has to be done to a standard of excellence. And excellence is what I define that to be. But thinking about my need to be perfect led me to have anxiety. Didn't know that's what it was at the time. But that's how it manifests. And so my perfectionism turned into workaholism, right? I always tell people working is my hobby. Nobody has a stronger work ethic than me. Nobody's going to get up earlier. Nobody's going to stay later. And I used it as an excuse. Oh, I love work. Work is a hobby. No, you're a workaholic because you're a perfectionist, because you feel that if you put in these long hours and you do all of the things, that's going to lead to a perfect finished product. And I didn't know at the time that that leads to anxiety. On the flip side, those of you that don't necessarily think you're a perfectionist, anxiety can also lead to perfectionist. So it's like a catch-22. Some other things that I learned about myself is that I had a fear of failure. I don't necessarily have it now. Now I actually have a fear of success. Isn't that weird? So weird. But if you are struggling with one or the other, that can also lead to anxiety, right? You have a fear of failure. You have a fear of, what people think about you. You have a fear of rejection, right? You don't want people to think that you don't have it all together or that you don't have all of the answers. All of those things tie in and make the perfect recipe for anxiety. And not realizing this, I did not get help for this because I just thought this is who I am, this is my personality. And guess what? It has not failed me, right? Everything that I put my mind to, everything that I said I was going to do and become and achieve, I do it. I always say I'm a master manifester. If I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I had a mom that said, hey, you can do anything that you put your mind to. And I honestly believe that, right? It maybe didn't click for me as much until I became an entrepreneur. And I was like, oh, this is what mom said. But I knew if I put my mind to it, and according to my dad, there is nothing stronger than a made up mind. I was going to do it. So Brittany says I have anxiety and a mixture of failing, and success. I thank you, Brittany. I thought I was the only one. It's strange to fear failure and also fear success. And so I will say, because people ask me before, what do you mean by that fear success? I know what achieving a certain level of success means. It means I have to show up more than I already show up. It means I have to always be on more than I'm already on. And so there's this level of responsibility. You've heard the saying, to whom much is given, much is expected. And so my fear is, can I actually give any more than I'm giving? Can I show up more than I'm showing up right now? Can I give more of myself more than I'm giving right now? And part of me says I can, but the other part of me says, will I lose Quisha if I really do that? And so for those of you that, are closest to me, you'll see there's times where I'm like going, 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 going. And there's times where I'm pulling back because I'm trying to find that balance of, do I really want to go hard? Or do I really want to save some of my intimate life and private moments for me? And that is hard. That is so hard. Thank y'all so much for joining in the comments. So that's where I've noticed I have dealt with anxiety. Now, in about maybe 8 years ago, I had a little bout with depression and anxiety, and that was stemming from some issues that I have with my teen. I'm not going to get into it. It's personal and private for him. But I will say, for those of you all that have a teenager, you probably understand where I'm coming from. And those of you all that have small children and they're not there, pray now. Just start praying now, because I did not know the teen years will literally almost take you out. And that was my challenging child, and I pray that is my only challenging child. I have one more, but he literally took me out. And so that was situational anxiety and situational depression. And I really didn't think anything about that. We got past that, and I thought, there's nothing wrong with me. I don't have what other people have. I don't have long-standing depression and long-standing anxiety. And I can remember telling other people, like, oh, you need to get some help. You need to get some meds. You need to see a therapist. You're dealing with this, not knowing all the time that my working all the time and doing all the things and sitting on all the boards, that was also anxiety just manifesting in a different way. So I want to fast forward to 2024. Okay. And actually, I want to do a range of things. 2024, this year, I went through 3 months of very dark times and a very tough period of situational depression, which is what it's been diagnosed as. I will say I still deal with it. I dealt with it yesterday. And so it's not something that I can say I'm past or I'm over. It's something that I have to work at every single day. And I give myself the grace to work through it. So I'll share a little bit of my journey. I've talked about this openly before, so I'm not, ashamed to share it. I'll try not to get emotional talking about it because it can be a sore topic. But I want to share with you just how, personal things can really affect your business. So my husband and I have been married almost 8 years. And as I've just mentioned, I have two children, 22 and 14 boys, and my husband does not. When we got married, we knew we would be expanding our family. And because I had no problems getting pregnant the first two times, I just thought I'll reverse my tubes and we'll have a baby and life will be good and it'll just keep going on the way it's been. I was completely naive. I didn't factor into the fact that I'm over 40 years old now, and I was in my 20s when I had my children. 19 and then 28. And so we struggled, for lack of a better term, for 3.5 years to conceive. To fast forward, our journey consisted of a tubal reversal, a fibroectomy, a miscarriage from getting pregnant naturally, spending a year trying to get pregnant and wondering, okay, what's going on, just to find out that the tubes blocked again from scar tissue, to now starting IVF, intravenous fertilization. And when I started this process of IVF, I thought, oh, okay, well, the tubes are blocked. I get that, right? You can't get pregnant without your ovarian tubes, your fallopian tubes. But it never occurred to me that we would not be successful. Quisha wins at life. Quisha wins at everything. I'm DJ Khaled. All I do is win, 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 no matter what. Everything I put my mind to, I achieve. Everything I say I'm going to do, I'm going to do. So the thought of starting this process and not having the outcome that we expected never occurred to me. It was a very transactional process. We give you our $30,000 for this process. You give us a baby. That's how it works. So when we didn't get pregnant after the first transfer, I was devastated. But I said, okay, it doesn't work the first time. It's science, but it's not perfect science. It's an experiment, essentially. It's only been around since the 70s. I didn't have the right regimen. I didn't have the right doses. They're going to modify my procedure and my cycle, and we'll do it again. And on the second time, we'll be successful. And so we did it again. And this time I didn't get enough eggs to even transfer. Wait a minute, this isn't supposed to happen. What do you mean my numbers went down again? My AMH is lower. Now they're looking at, well, maybe it's an egg quality issue. And so if you've never experienced fertility struggles, and my diagnosis is secondary infertility, it's one of those things that as a perfectionist, as a planner, as someone that controls their outcome, you have no control. You can take all the shots and all the meds and all the supplements and do all the appointments and all the procedures and all the things, and you still have no control with the outcome. So take someone who has a history of being an overachieving perfectionist who likes to control their outcomes and their situations and their environment, and put them in a situation where regardless of what they do, they cannot control that outcome. So then we go for cycle 3. And I get the most eggs I've ever retrieved. They see 12 eggs that were should have been retrieved, rather, is what I should say. And I wake up from anesthesia and they say, oh, we were only able to retrieve 5. The other follicles were empty and I'm deflated. And then of those 5, 4 die immediately and I'm left with 1 that grows. And I'm thinking, oh my God, we're $50,000 into this process. And I did all of the things and I took all of the tests and I did the what is it called? The the uterine biopsy, which, by the way, I don't recommend. It's not fun. And it showed I had inflammation. So I did the chemically induced menopause, and I had hot flashes, crazy, ridiculous hot flashes for 3 months. And the shots alone, the monthly shot alone, was $1,400 a shot. So I did all the things, and I'm like, we've got one more shot at this. And we did not implant. We did not get pregnant. It wasn't what I expected. It wasn't the outcome that I thought was going to happen. And what's a good way to put it? I just came undone. I came undone. To be quite honest, was very angry with God. I've done all the things you've asked me to. I tithe, I serve, I pour into others. I manage my household, which is my first ministry. I did the diet. I was working out with the trainer. I did all of the things. Why did this not work? So that's the first thing. I'm really, really angry with God. And then after the initial anger with God and my doctor, I won't lie, I was angry with my doctor too. Then it's, how did you fail at being a woman? How did you fail at doing something that your body is supposed to naturally do anyway? What is wrong with you? So, as you can imagine, there was this really sickening and sad interplay emotionally and negative self-talk that I just gave myself and beat myself up over. Why couldn't you just do this one thing? This is the one thing that you wanted to do. Now I'm having this emotional turmoil and breakdown, and my husband is being his most just supportive, wonderful self that he can be. And then I'm saying, well, we need to divorce. I can't give you a baby. You got to go find somebody that can give you a baby. And then I'm thinking about my 14-year-old, and he's like, no, if y'all want a baby, just adopt one. Well, I don't want a baby. It was crazy. It was crazy. And I said I was actually going to pull my journal, because at the time, even before I started seeing a therapist, I have a tendency, I'm not a journaler, but I do like to write. I am a writer. And so I just started writing all of the emotions that I felt down. I feel like a failure. I feel defeated. I feel crushed. I feel cheated. I feel like I'm running out of time. I feel, what was the word? It was one word that I just broken. I feel brokenhearted. I feel sad for my husband. I feel guilt. I really didn't want the baby anyway. So this is exactly what should have happened. There were so many things that were going in my mind, and I literally couldn't get out of bed in the day. My husband said, I cannot see you like this. I'm not used to seeing my strong wife. He always says, you are a lion, right? That's what people know me to be, the strong person. He says, you're a lion. I'm not used to seeing you like this every day. You need to talk to somebody. You need to do something. You need to go somewhere. He was very adamant about this. And initially, I still didn't want to talk to anybody. I remember my mom calling and saying, I'm going to come. I need to lay my eyes on you. She lives in another state. And I didn't even want my mom to see me. One thing about being the oldest, being the strong friend, right? It's very hard for you to let other people see you be vulnerable and be weak. And that's how I felt in the moment. I didn't stop to give myself grace. Initially, I didn't anyway. And then probably after 2 weeks of not being able to get out of bed, I said, I got to do something. Because at that point, I was refunding money from workshops and webinars that I could not do. There were events that were scheduled that I could not make. And then I was sending emails lying about, oh, this happened, or this email forgot to go out, or this happened. And Stephanie, I see you're on. I know you were in one of those webinars at the time. I remember in the month of May, I refunded over $5,000 from just coaching sessions and workshops and webinars and courses and different things because I just could not do it. I literally, in my business, I would keep a discovery session because that's a new client or a potential new client. I would keep my meetings with my current client. I would keep my meetings with my team. And 90% of those meetings, my camera was off. And my intern, I had an intern then too. My camera was off. And I would tell everyone that either I was sick, I was recovering, my webcam was broke, or something else was happening because I just couldn't face the world. I had not ever remembered being that depressed in my life. And so after 2 weeks, I got into therapy. Therapy, let me just say this. Therapy is something that you need and I recommend, and not just for IVF, but anything that you're going through. But therapy is not a one-time fix, okay? And therapy is hard. Therapy is something that will help you in the long run. But when you have a therapy session, try to make sure your calendar is light for the day because it is going to evoke a lot of emotion out of you. In talking and sharing your feelings and what you're going through. You may cry, you may be angry, you may be upset. There's going to be 101 emotions. And I remember going through those sessions, and after I would be completely defeated, just like not defeated, but deflated. I'm done. And I go back and I get in the bed, right? And so, May and June or half of June was just in the bed all day with my laptop. And then I would come in here if I had a meeting that I had to be on camera on, or I would stay in my bed and do my work. That was the first time. Now, keep in mind, I've been in business almost 5 years. That was the first time I considered, or not considered, going back to work. Let me not say that. That was the first time I missed working for someone. Because when I worked for someone, I could take PTO and not worry about it. When I worked for someone, I knew there was EAP. When I worked for someone, I knew that on that PTO, I was still getting paid, or I could take a sick leave and still getting paid. This was the first time that I actually lost money because I was not able to work. But in every dark cloud, there's a silver lining, because this was also the time that I realized my business has to pivot. Some service lines have got to change or close, and I can't be in my business every single day touching every single deliverable. Up until that point, every single deliverable for every single contract and project that we had, I touched it. And a business can't grow and scale if the CEO is in it every day touching every single deliverable. Our business model has changed since then. Had I not went through what I went through this summer, I would not have realized that. So that's where I was and what I was going through during those times. Now, yes, was it stressful the 3.5 years that we were doing all of these other things? Absolutely, it was stressful. Did we have anxiety? Yes. A lot of anxiety about the process. But did I ever think I would not be successful? I would not have the outcome that I wanted? Absolutely not. And so that anxiety was manageable. That anxiety, I could use work and my business as a distraction, which is what a therapist told me I do. I use work as a distraction. That's something that in the last 5 months, I've tried not to do. I've tried to actually just address things head on so that they don't come up later and I have a meltdown the way I've had one a few months ago. So now let me talk about the support systems that help me overcome those challenges, because that's really the biggest thing that I want you to get out of all of these interviews that I'm having with business owners. So the first thing you heard me say was, one, I had a super supportive partner. Okay. My husband was very supportive. He hated to see, and it's so funny, like he hated to see me like that. And I hated to see him see me like that. Right. I hated to see what I was doing, what my mood was doing to him, because he felt so sad for me and so helpless because he couldn't help me and how I was feeling. And I say that if you can find someone, hopefully it is your partner, if you're married or you're in a relationship with someone, but even if it's a best friend, even if it's a mom, even if it's a sister, you've got to find someone that's not going to judge you, that's not going to hold it against you, that's going to just understand where you're coming from and show you that empathy and support you. That's first and foremost. The second thing was I got into therapy. Now, I wanted so badly to find a therapist that was Black, to find a Black woman, and to find someone that had some experience in dealing with fertility struggles or fertility issues. And I did not find that. I found a wonderful, empathetic, very sweet white woman that is still my therapist to this day. And she has one other patient that she said is almost identical to my situation. So she had some experience with what I was going on. And so we started meeting on a weekly basis. And every time we would meet, she would give me a different task or a different tool of problem solving, or I would be journaling and writing something down. The things that I wrote, the poetry that I wrote, the letters that I wrote to my husband, the letter that I wrote to my deceased, to the child that I didn't bear from the miscarriage that I had at 7 or 8 weeks. She had me write those letters and then I would read those to her. And all of that was very painful, but it was also very therapeutic as well. I never got on medication. I never to this day have been on medication for anxiety or depression. It doesn't mean that I'm averse to it. I would do it if I needed to, but just judging based on my therapist and also the assessment from a psychotherapist, it wasn't something that I needed. During this time, I also got assessed by a psychotherapist. I thought I had ADD, adult attention disorder. But I don't. She said it was anxiety. A few months even before this happened, I got assessed by a neurologist who again diagnosed me with anxiety. And I was very adamant that it's not anxiety what I'm experiencing. So I have all these diagnoses of anxiety, and this is how it's manifesting for me. Not the traditional panic attack, right? Not the sweats or the shakes and, the heartbeat. It's manifesting as this person that has this need to create and constantly do and overachieve and do all the things, right? And so now I have to put things in my life to check me, right? I had to step down from a nonprofit that I founded, it killed me to do it. But I needed to for my sanity. I had to step down from other things, other boards. I pulled a lot of things off of my plate as well. I gave my permission to fire myself from things and to quit certain things so that I can have some sanity. And the last thing that I did was a couple things. One was I went on a grief tour. And this is actually my husband's suggestion. Well, let me be honest. My husband said, you need to take a trip. You need to go somewhere and just relax, go on a vacation. He didn't even say with him. He was like, you just need to go somewhere. And so I was actually listening to a podcast at the time. It was a fertility podcast. And the guest and the host were talking about after their failed IVF cycles, they just started spending exorbitant amounts of money. And one said, oh, we just went on this long trip. And they were talking about how grief makes you just do some things, just some crazy things you wouldn't normally do. And one of the women said, yeah, we called it our grief tour. And I thought, well, that's interesting. My husband has been telling me to go somewhere anyway. And I've got this summer, and I'd already said I'm taking off the month of August. And I really started thinking about, just making some changes in my life and in my business. And I said, I'm going to go on a grief tour. And from June to the end of August or the mid-August, I just went on trips every couple of weeks. And so my cousin and I, first trip we went to was Costa Rica. Cannot wait to get back there. Probably spend the summer there if I can. My husband and I spent a week on beachside in Galveston, if you want to call it a beach, but we were there. I went back home to Arkansas a couple of times, once for a family reunion, once for a birthday party. I took my youngest son on a cruise. We went to Mexico. And then we rounded out the grief tour again in Tijuana, Mexico, where I went to have weight loss surgery. I got the vertical sleeve gastrectomy. And it was rejuvenating. And I realized not everybody has the means to be able to do that or to take that amount of time off or that type of travel. But it was exactly what I needed to take my mind off of what I just gone through. I still was processing it in my weekly therapy sessions. I'm still processing it now. Like I said, I still struggle with it. I had a talk with a woman yesterday that's going through the process, and I even shared with my husband when she talked about how many embryos they were able to get that were all normal, tested normal. And I found myself having this twinge of jealousy. And then I found myself having this twinge, for lack of a better word, of guilt and sadness, profound sadness. And so I still have to work through those emotions. I know that will probably be with me for a very long time, but those are some of the strategies that I do to overcome these challenges that I'm having. All right. So, what's been my biggest lesson from my mental health journey, from what I identified as anxiety and not knowing it was anxiety, to this situational depression that I'm currently in, and certainly experienced a few months ago? I think the biggest thing that I have learned is to show myself grace. To show myself grace. And you'll hear me, this is kind of a theme throughout some of the conversations throughout this series, is as people, we tend to show others more grace than we give ourselves, and show others more forgiveness than we give ourselves, or be easier on others than we are on ourselves. And so I had to say, yes, Quisha, you're the oldest. Yes, you're the friend that everybody goes to with their problems. You're the strong one. You're the one that's got it all together, but it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to wake up one morning and just don't have anything to give to the world. And in the past, I would wake up and not have it to give and give it anyway. And these days, if there's days you don't see me on social or you don't hear from me, just know it's a day I don't have to give. And so I no longer fake that funk anymore. If I have 50%, you're going to get 50% that day. If I have 100%, you're going to get 100% that day. That's something I never would have done in the past. If I only had 20% to give, I was still going to give 110%, because that's what I thought a successful person did. And so now I'm reframing my ideal of success. It was a big deal for me, a goal for me, to make $1 million in my business. That's no longer a goal. I don't want to have this big business with 10 consultants and millions of projects. I want a lifestyle business. I want, as my good friend Teresa Sanderson says, who's going to be on the podcast in a couple of weeks, I want a business in a backpack. I want to semi-retire now. I want to do my summers, in Costa Rica or in Nigeria. I want to be a digital nomad. And so back to that silver lining in my dark cloud. Yes, it was dark. Yes, some days are still sad and dark. But because I went through that experience, I'm now able to see the type of lifestyle that I want for myself and my mental health, and build around my business around that idea, and make sure that the things that I do are in alignment with that. So that's the biggest lessons from my mental health journey. And I hope that something that I've shared with you has been helpful and has been meaningful, and you can take some of what I've shared and apply it to your life. Okay. The other thing that I will say before I wrap up, and I want to make sure I'm answering all the questions that I also ask of my guest, is give yourself permission to cut ties in relationships. I think that that was something that I learned. You don't have to continue to do all the things. You don't have to continue to spread yourself thin. You don't have to continue to show up at everything all of the time. I even struggle with this now. Like, I put myself last, I think, a lot. I'm the oldest, and so and we're pretty spaced out. So I'm like a second mom. I'm just all of the things that you would think an oldest child resembles and represents. And because I have, and also I'm a woman and a Black woman. So naturally, we care for everybody else. We put everybody else before us. But now I'm learning that if I don't prioritize myself, that if I don't fully love and care for myself, I don't give my permission to do that for anyone else. And I never gave myself permission to do that before until I had this episode. So give yourself permission to cut ties. Give yourself permission to cut relationships. Give yourself permission to step down. Give yourself permission to remove yourself from situations that no longer serve you and serve your mental health. And find out who you are and your identity. When I talked to Teresa, she said something that was so just revelational when I asked her, how did you come out of a 3-year depression? Her story is amazing. I can't wait for you all to hear it. And she said, I learned who I was outside of my business. I think in this moment, and I'll try not to get emotional. I learned who Quisha was outside of my business, outside of what I do, outside of just what I can offer. And I think when I think about what I struggled the most with, having failed my ability to bring life into the world again and being unsuccessful with IVF, as I learned that I was more than just what I could offer the world. And again, kind of going into my childhood, you learn these things when you stay in therapy long enough. When you think about, I grew up in a 2-parent home. My stepfather raised me as his since I was 3. But my sisters are his children. And then I have another father. And so I have this identity crisis, for lack of a better word, of I wasn't good enough, right? And so for me, it's always been my identity and my worth as a person is only as good as what I can give and offer the world. And I've learned in this moment, and this is, I mean, God, I don't know what you're doing, right? I'm just standing in you ordering my steps, right? I know there's purpose behind pain. I do know that. I know that there is testimony behind test. I know that there is a reason that we were not successful. I know there is a reason that my husband and I are going to have a ministry down the line and helping other people get through something very similar. I don't know what that reason is right now, but what I do know is I know who Quisha is outside of her ability to birth. I know who Quisha is outside of the public healthpreneur. I know who Quisha is outside of Umemba Health. And that is not something that I knew before this. And so if nothing else, I will say, when you have an experience with mental health, if you allow yourself to do the work, you can find who you are truly, not just big sister, not just the perfectionist, not just the overachiever, not just the workaholic. You can find out who you are at the core and what means the most and what's most important to you. So I'm going to finish the podcast episode at that. I am so grateful for those of you that joined. Thank you so much for your comments. I see them there. Thank you for those of you that are listening on the Public Healthpreneur podcast. Please share your comments with me. Let me know what you think. Leave me a review. And if you'd like to follow me, please at Quisha Umemba on all social media platforms. That's LinkedIn, that's YouTube, that's Facebook and Instagram. If you're interested in more information about our services, visit umembahealth.com, UMEMBA health.com. And again, if you're interested in picking up my book, The Public Health Entrepreneurship, Navigating the Intersection of Purpose and Profit, you can find that on my website, QuishaUmemba.com/book. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Let me tell you something. I've got something so good in store for y'all with these interviews. Tune into all of them. You're really going to learn a lot of just great, valuable, insightful nuggets as it relates to mental health and running your business. So stay tuned. And thanks again for watching and listening. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.